Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and today I'm very grateful to have Josh Greene with us. Josh is the CEO for the Mather Group, a digital marketing agency that solves marketing challenges for companies of all sizes. With over 20 years of experience creating and implementing digital strategies, Josh has empowered top brands and individuals to shape their online presence to support their bottom line. Josh is a frequent speaker at conferences and industry events, including the Public Relations Society of America, the AAF, AdTech, SES, PR Summit, and Channel Advisors Catalyst Conference. Before the Mather Group, Josh managed online and DRTV programs for industry leaders such as Discovery Channel, Time Warner Cable, 1-800-PACK-RAT, and Zippy Shell. And I also remember Josh was working at shop.org way back in the day as well. And so we actually have that connection. And he and I were in the same mastermind together for a while, Neil Strauss's secret society called The Society. Josh, it's so great to have you on the show.
It's great to get a chance to talk with you today, Stephan.
Well, it's been a little while, and it's really great to reconnect. And we had numerous intersections in our lives between Neil Strauss's secret society that we were both in and the shop.org organization that you were working at and I was a member of, and that was way back in the day, long time ago, and also at Discovery Channel. You were a client for a while there back with my previous company. And yeah, we actually implemented, I think, Gravity Stream on the Discovery Channel store, if I remember correctly. It's been at least a decade and a half or something, so my memory may be failing me, but that seems to be the case, that was what we did with you.
Yeah, that's a really good memory from 15 years back. But that was what we did at Discovery, and it's been sort of fun to see the Net Concepts name come back into re-existence. I guess everything goes full circle.
Yeah. Well, after a decade of non-use of that brand and the acquiring company back in 2010, abandoning the trademark and giving the domain netconcepts.com back to me, I just thought, well, you know what? It's been a decade. I might as well use it. So,
right, and plenty of people have fond memories of it, so why not?
Yeah. So I'd love to hear your story of how you went from client side to agency side. What a big shift to start your own agency when you were helping brands like Discovery Channel and 1-800-PACK-RAT build such a fantastic online presence, and you just decided, I'm going to go into business for myself. Like, how did that come about?
At the time, about 5 years ago, I was working at Zippy Shell, which offers the pod containers that you'll use if you want to store things or move things. And I had a few people I knew who were looking for help with some aspect of online marketing. And when that was combined with, we were starting a family, and while Zippy Shell had wonderful offices, they were in Georgetown, which, if you're familiar at all with Washington, D.C. traffic, is one of the more challenging places to get to. No metro and everyone cutting through Georgetown. So it was a good time to go off on my own, which is something I had wanted to do since college. And actually, our friend Neil's metaphor about the two trains, making sure you have something to jump onto before you jump off of one, came in handy in terms of making that transition. And started at the kitchen table, and now 5 years later, I have migrated all the way down to the basement. So it has worked out very well.
And you've been working with some really impressive brands too. Like, can you give a a few examples of some of the household names that you've worked with?
Sure. Well, we still do some work with Discovery. I still know some people there who we help with. We do a ton of work in the B2B space. So some of the big brands, there, Appian's one of them. So it's gone well. I think one of the interesting things about starting an agency is seeing the evolution that everyone tells you about, where you start by being perhaps not as picky about clients, where you're looking for people who will pay you money, and over time you get a bit more selective and sort of figure out what your niche is that you're really going to be able to deliver good results for. So it's an interesting evolution over time, because I don't think we would have been able to support some of the clients we have now the way that we can back in the beginning of things.
Right. And so you've specialized, it seems like you've really carved out a niche in the SEO space. So it's not just full service digital agency that does everything under the sun. You have really made a name for yourself in the SEO world, and also in the area of Wikipedia. We'll talk about that a bit later in this conversation. But let's start with SEO. Like, where do you see SEO going, and what have been some of the most interesting or challenging situations that you've faced and conquered?
Yeah, it's been interesting because we've had an evolution in our approach to SEO. When I first started the company, I had thought that we would be doing a lot of work similar to what we had done at the Discovery stores, selling physical products and helping optimize their presence online. And a lot of what we're doing now is helping companies with online reputation. And, as you're familiar with, a lot of that is education about what you can and can't do, and what kind of results are possible and not possible. And what we've found, a lot of what we're doing lately in conversations with clients is working with them to understand how SEO is in fact evolving. Sometimes it seems like SEO in sort of popular culture is 3 to 5 years behind what's sort of happening in the industry. And I think right now people are slowly coming to the realization that what they've thought of as traditional SEO in Google, in terms of there's links and we sort of rank high by virtue of who we are, a lot of that shelf space is gradually getting pushed further and further down the page. So it is certainly a change in how things were when we first started out, in terms of what the objectives are and all the different tools that you need to use to help your clients.
Mm-hmm. What would be an example or two of a favorite SEO tool, or even just general marketing tools that are your go-tos?
Yeah, we're a huge fan of Moz. They put out some really great content in the industry. They also put out a lot of great intro content that's good for clients who are getting up to speed. So we use a lot of their tools. Big fans of SEMrush, Screaming Frog for crawling, and then general marketing tool. We've really come to rely heavily on something called Pipedrive for CRM, which is just great for keeping in touch with people, because it forces you to pick a next action when you're done with something you're doing, which is really good for sort of making sure you stay in touch with people, which has been really helpful.
That's awesome. Yeah, so you're using Pipedrive as your CRM. Do you also recommend it to any of your clients, or are they using the really big solutions like Salesforce.com?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know that I've ever been asked for a CRM recommendation. We get tons of recommendations about how do I or requests about how do I build my website. And the other one that's come up a lot beyond SEO is just email providers. People are always curious about what people are using, and I think much like SEO, hoping for that magic solution that will solve all of their issues for them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, like, do you have a list of tools that you're constantly recommending, or particular resources or vendors?
I would say it's more of a mental list at this point. One of the
Yeah.
things that we've found with email, having worked with both the very high end email platforms like Infusionsoft before it changed its name, and Mailchimp, is most companies aren't using all the features that they've gotten sold on, right? Even some of the big ones are, they could have multiple paths and programmatic approaches and if then approaches to email. And most of the time, they either are doing or would be better served just by doing one big email list, because they don't have the capacity to be quite as sophisticated as they would like to think they're going to be in terms of email, unless it's really core to their business.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Do you come across Marketo?
We do. Haven't heard too much about it lately. Most of the time, most of our conversations are about SEO tools specifically, or Wikipedia tools, which I'm sure we'll talk about, although there aren't a ton of those. So that tends to be a shorter conversation sometimes.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'm interested to talk about those.
No, I was going to ask what you've heard about Marketo, or if you're seeing that used a lot.
Yeah, I personally don't come across it that often, but I've certainly heard about it, and I was curious
Yeah.
if you had any experience with it. We use Infusionsoft or Keep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we also use Kartra, which we find to be easier to implement versus Infusionsoft. And we've invested so heavily in Infusionsoft over the years that we didn't want to just migrate completely off of it. So we use Kartra as well. And we have connectors and things like that we've connected up to Infusionsoft. So a lot of complexity there. We also have a CRM that is just for our own leads, not for things like our membership site or online courses, but just for the consulting leads. And we use Capsule for that, Capsule CRM. Probably pretty similar to Pipedrive, I would guess. But yeah, and if Infusionsoft wasn't the best fit for the small number of prospects and clients that were managing and moving through the buyer journey, it was too much for us to implement that with Infusionsoft. So yeah, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I think if you're running a consulting firm that's not one of the giant ones, you just need something that's almost a step up from the spreadsheet. It's in the hundreds or thousands. It's not in the hundreds of thousands of contacts that we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Both. It's funny. Both Infusionsoft and now HubSpot are tools that have grown so much that if you're really know how to use them, you can get them to do just about anything. But if you're sort of casually trying to use them, you can sort of get overwhelmed and go down sort of the rabbit hole of not leveraging all the different things that are out there.
Yeah.
We also have used Kajabi a little bit for courses, which is good, and again is probably overkill for the type of stuff that we're doing, because we're not really producing courses for sale. We just want something to manage online content for us in a linear way. But we really like the tools that they had when we were using that.
Okay, so you're not using Kajabi anymore.
No, we just moved off of it because we started realizing we just needed essentially a shared Google Drive of resources for clients to access. A lot of what happened was clients needed one particular tool or resource, or they needed a specific problem. So we weren't really in the here comes week 1, week 2, week 3, your typical content journey. It was more they needed an encyclopedia where they could pick, I need to know how to configure Search Console or whatever their topic du jour was.
Got it. Yep. We use LearnDash. We started with Memberium, and that's a great membership management tool. Runs on WordPress, but it doesn't have all the gamification of a full learning management system or LMS. So we opted for LearnDash on top of Memberium because they work well together. So yeah, that's what we're doing for our 6 online courses. Yeah.
Very cool. The other one that I've seen out there but haven't personally used is called Tovuti, which Troy McClain is running, who is the guy who came in second on the very first season of The Apprentice. And it looks like a good solution for course-based stuff, but I haven't used it at this point.
Yeah, cool. I'll have to look into that. I love collecting awesome tools and making recommendations, and awesome vendors too. Like on my mental list of resources to recommend to clients, one of the top ones on my list is Studio One Design. I love recommending them because they do such a great job, and it's hard to find a really great web design firm. Either they don't do a great job on the look of it, or it's not designed for conversion, or it takes forever to do the design work, or it's way overpriced, or a combination of all the above.
Yeah.
It's hard to find a really good company. So I've been referring them for years and years and years, probably since I first found out about them through being in Taki Moore's mastermind black belt, which was like 2014 or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's a tough one to find a good resource for. So that's a good recommendation to have.
Yep. Another tool that I like recommending a lot is SparkToro. Have you played with SparkToro at all?
I have. I really love their the tool, not as much, but I love their trending topics as sort of a snapshot of what's going on in the industry. It's fantastic, and actually use it quite a bit when I'm looking for newsletter topics. And you probably have used the tool more in terms of research, I would assume, to see what the audience research and things like that.
Right. So it's great for identifying podcasts to pitch for myself or for my clients. So I have my team trained up on how to use it, and you find a competing podcast or influencer social account that you can look at their audience and see what that audience listens to in terms of podcasts, what they watch as far as YouTube channels, what other social accounts they follow, and websites they visit. And in particular, going after those podcasts, that's a great way to do outreach to get on relevant and popular podcasts.
Yeah, and the other, I think, recommendation I would make, extending off of that, is Rand Fiskin's book on I think it's called Lost and Founder, about being a startup CEO. Had a lot of great advice, and was really a warts and all book that's a help if you're running something.
Yeah, he's great, and he was my co-author on the first 2 editions of The Art of SEO.
Of course.
He's co-founder of SparkToro, founder of Moz, formerly SEO Moz, and so You and I know these things, but for our listener,
Yes.
who doesn't
Good point. Good
necessarily
point.
know.
Too much inside baseball. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Rand was also a guest on this podcast, and so actually a couple of times. So I'll include in the show notes links to all these different tools and Rand's books, and yeah, Lost and Founder was really a tell-all about the struggles of being a startup founder going for money with the VC community, VC standing sometimes for vulture capital and not just venture capital, and how he kind of got pushed out of
Yeah.
Moz. Yeah, fascinating,
Which
and
is,
very generous of him to share so openly, even though it would close some doors for him. Like, it's unlikely he would ever be able to get VC funding because of that book ever again. But he did it for us, so that we don't have to learn the same painful lessons doing it ourselves. We can learn from his lessons.
yeah, I mean, I think there's a whole, it may have opened the door to sort of the whole genre of what goes on behind the curtain of running a, small business in the cosmic scheme of things. But if you're, there are a lot of books on running IBM. There aren't as many on running a 40-person company. And I think he gave a lot of people some courage to say this doesn't have to be, a mystical thing, or, here's how some of reality actually works. When you get, you're going to raise money once or twice. People are funding companies hundreds of times. There's definitely an information imbalance that has started to be addressed, probably starting with a lot of what he did.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious, what other favorite books do you want to recommend to our listener?
There's a good one I've read a couple times recently, The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham, which is all
I
about,
love him.
yeah, we I think go to some of the same places and meet some of the same people sometimes, and it's a very blunt, candid look at things, and that came in handy right as the pandemic started, especially a lot of his advice on cash flow and what you need to do in tough times. There's a
By the way,
book
did
that
you ever hear him speak? Have you seen him on stage?
I've seen him online. I haven't seen him in person, but I would imagine that's an experience.
Oh, he's awesome. Yes, it is amazing. He's such a great speaker and so disarming, so relatable, and so funny. He's hilarious, and it's just very dry, subtle humor. If he's not getting a reaction, for example, from the audience, he'll just say hello. Like he's on the other end of the phone. It's awesome. I just
It's
love
great.
him. Yeah. Yeah. I found out about him through Tony Robbins because he speaks a lot for Tony, like at Business
Oh,
Mastery and the Platinum Partner trips. Yeah.
very
Yeah.
cool. And then the two other ones that leap to mind, one is Sean Buck and Dan Kennedy wrote a book about referrals, and Sean runs the newsletter Pros. And I think it's a relatively short book. It's like 15 chapters, but each one has some really interesting stuff on generating referrals, which in a business that's as trust based as the SEO space is just huge. So that's one I like. And then What You Do Is Who You Are by Ben Horowitz, who's at the Andreessen VC conglomerate, had a whole lot of management advice. And what I really liked about that was he had 4 or 5 examples of completely different types of organizations. And you could take things from anywhere from prison gangs to corporations. So that was pretty powerful. And it was also nice where it avoided the usual suspects where they're, maybe one of one, right? Tesla probably may not have a ton of lessons for, other people just because of a unique set of circumstances that surrounded it. or if it does, it's been covered a few times in the news versus, some of these stories were way less known. So I found that really informative and just helpful in terms of, as you think about culture of an organization, especially, and I would imagine you have this too, Stephan, is just a distributed group of people, and trying to figure out how do you build culture when everyone's hundreds of miles, if not thousands of miles away.
Mm-hmm.
So I think many of us got tired of the Zoom happy hour fairly quickly, and so it was it was fascinating to see how do you help people connect on a deeper level than just the immediate to-do list, and that was really good. So I would definitely recommend that.
Well, how distributed is your team?
We're all distributed. Everyone is in somewhere else across the U.S. So Vermont, Florida, California, Washington. Aside from a married couple who work together, obviously everyone's in a different space. And one of our employees who's been here, I think 3 years, was saying that the only person she's ever met in person was me, and that just happened to be because she lives an hour away. So when we interviewed, we did it in person. So it's we have hopes of all getting together in person in 2022.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, we've got a team distributed across many countries, like Europe and the UK and Philippines. We have a staff person who travels between the U.S., Mexico, and France. So yeah,
That sounds
it'll be
fun.
months
And
at a time
complicated.
where she's in because she's from Mexico, and so she's visiting family for extended periods with her family, with her immediate family, visiting parents and stuff, and then she has her husband's family living in France, so they'll spend extended periods of time in France, months or even years. Yeah.
Oh wow.
So it's
Have you
pretty
found
cool to be able to run an organization where you can have people do that from anywhere. Just be location independent, location and time independent. So
I was going to say you've got a whole nother level of asynchronous when you've got people 6 hours ahead or behind. Are there
right.
any tools or tricks that you've used with that?
Well, one thing I for quality of life, I highly recommend you let them be on their own time zone and not try to force them to work the third shift or something. That's just kind of cruel.
Yeah.
So they don't have a lot of overlap with our U.S. team if they're in the Philippines, and that's okay. That's okay. And I found that if you have some great tools in place to facilitate asynchronous communication, such as Slack and ClickUp, we were using Asana before ClickUp. We switched to ClickUp this year. What else are we using? We use Process Street. We have lots of training videos.
I was going to say, do you like Process Street? That looks like something we might be doing in 2022, actually.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. I like having the prerequisites and just the whole process flow as a checklist. We're using ClickUp more than anything else, but yeah, each tool has its own use cases. So Slack, for example, we try to keep it really for communication and not for tracking of projects and tasks. Oh, and we also use Time Doctor for tracking time and being able to allocate that time towards particular client projects and bill for that. And Yeah, that works well. It's also got some accountability capabilities in there, just like Upwork does. So if you work with a contractor on Upwork, formerly Odesk, there's tracking of the activity. So if it's low activity time period, it will alert both the worker and the employer. Right, so not much activity in terms of mouse clicks or
Mhm.
keystrokes, and then also taking random screenshots. And so if they're doing Facebook or watching
Right.
Netflix in the middle of working, you'll be able to catch that. So trust but
Yeah, you said.
verify, right?
Yeah, exactly. You said something interesting about billing back for clients. Do you lean towards the billing by hours or retainer approach when you think about things? Just because SEO is one of those things where it's um, uh, what's the saying? Small hinges move big doors, or sometimes it's the value and not necessarily the time. So I'd be curious how you've thought about that.
Yeah, small hinges swing big doors. Yes, I like that analogy. I also like the one where the a factory is
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
come to a screeching halt. It can't function, and then the repairman comes in. He has a look, twists one particular screw, and everything starts working again. And then he sends a bill, and it's whatever, $100,000 or $10,000, and the factory owner has a fit about it. And he's like, I want an itemized invoice. You were only here for 10 minutes. It's like, how can you charge $10,000 for 10 minutes? That's insane. And the guy sent an itemized invoice back that says, uh, screw or turning of the screw or whatever, 10 cents. And then knowing, the 20 years of experience to know which screw to turn, $9,999.90, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And
So in answer,
resonates.
yeah, well, when you asked this question about billing for time, you're right that it doesn't take into account the value. I do like value-based pricing, and when we're doing things like, um, well, we've been charging on a performance basis for 5 or 6 years now for link building, and there are definitely other aspects that we charge on a performance basis or on a value basis, but for content creation, such as video creation from blog post, turning that into a video using Lumen 5, which is another great tool, and writing blog posts, optimizing existing content, making it punchier or have a better hook to it or have better keyword focus to it, that sort of stuff. We do charge on an hourly basis against a retainer, and that gives the client some visibility into where that retainer is being used, because if they're spending whatever the amount is per month on that retainer, and we just say, here's what you got for this month, it feels incomplete, like there's some
Mhm.
black box that they don't get to peek inside. So we do charge those hours out hourly, and the clients appreciate that. Don't do that for, let's say, the production of an SEO audit or a keyword strategy, or, one of these bigger deliverables. We do charge a set amount and a project fee for that. So that's how we do it. How do you do it?
Um, Similarly, we try and break out hard costs separately, and usually we'll try and do retainer. I suspect that ours are probably in what's a smaller range or a single chunk that a lot of marketing organizations can just sort of budget for universally. So we've tried to set it up so it's a little bit all you can eat, so that we've also found that procurement departments are not real good at variable pricing, especially value-based pricing. Like, entrepreneurs understand value-based pricing. The procurement department oftentimes does not. So usually we'll try and do a flat fee retainer, but spell out pretty specifically exactly what's going to happen. So I guess in some ways we're almost doing the breakdown of the work ahead of time as opposed to as it's ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
But it definitely seems to be a sort of preference based around how the agency is sort of set up. It seems to be, when I talk to people, a lot of it depends on who started an agency and their approach to things sometimes.
Yeah. How would you charge for Wikipedia work? Because I know you guys are, that's one of your areas of specialty. You have a whole book on the topic of Wikipedia, and it's also fraught with dangers. So there aren't very many competitors in that space to what you do, and you got to be very careful to be squeaky clean so you don't get hunted by all the Wikipedia zealots. So yeah, let's talk a bit about Wikipedia, but let's start first by how do you price for that?
Similarly to SEO, it's usually retainer based, because what we found is it can fluctuate wildly, the amount of work you need to do month to month. And just from a client side, it was much more convenient to have a fixed fee that they could budget towards, and then it's sort of on us to manage the hours, so it works out pretty much the same way, just that they have some predictability for budgeting purposes. But also a large part of what we do with Wikipedia is education. Like you said, and I think everyone who's dealt with Wikipedia at one point or another has some sort of horror story. There are a lot of rules about what you can and can't do with Wikipedia. So oftentimes, especially in a big organization, there's education of a variety of stakeholders about what's going on with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are you able to share any case study, success story, or even a cautionary tale?
Sure. I'll speak generally, because pretty much everyone who has a Wikipedia issue usually has an NDA that goes along with it. What we've, it's funny, our biggest source of leads essentially is people who've tried to do it themselves. Wikipedia seems like it should be easy, right? If you're working at Microsoft and there's an incorrect piece of information, not even something that's controversial, but just the number of employees or your revenue or the names of your different product lines, it seems like you should be able to go in. There's an edit button. You have heard in pop culture for the last 15 years, everybody can edit Wikipedia. So your natural instinct is to say, I'm going to fix this. And then something bad happens, and it can be something minor. It can be an edit gets reverted, or a Wikipedia editor says something mean to you and tells you you violated 3 different rules. Wikipedia editors can be prickly, especially when it comes to for-profit entities. So oftentimes what we'll hear is Wikipedia rejected us, right? And there's a lot of explanation that goes on about, well, it was one editor on Wikipedia on one day, but here are all the rules you inadvertently violated that are 180 degrees the opposite of what someone in marketing might want to do. And so there's oftentimes we have people who don't even necessarily need Wikipedia fixed. They need an explanation of what's going on, both for themselves and for other people in their corporation. Sometimes, the typical example is if you have a CEO who, can have his own website say exactly what they would like. And then oftentimes the question is, why doesn't Wikipedia line up with that? Right. And if you're a VP of marketing, that's probably not your favorite question to try and answer, since oftentimes I think Wikipedia feels lose-lose. It's either very easy to fix the way your CEO wants, which is kind of thankless because there always will be some further question, or you break Wikipedia and now your CEO thinks that you couldn't do this thing that he thought was easy. So a lot of the Wikipedia world is actually just translating arcane jargon for companies to understand. I think probably similar to SEO in terms of here's sort of the art of the possible and why things kind of are the way they are.
Yeah. So one of the acronyms in the Wikipedia world is COI, conflict of interest. And there's a conflict of interest guideline that if you work for the organization that is the subject of the article, or it's a topic that is, where you're basically, you have an interest in that topic because of your employment, and it is to the benefit of your employer that what you're adding or editing to the article, that's a conflict of interest, and you're not supposed to do that. Now, the recommendation is to just let the community go ahead and make those edits. You could post to the talk page and say, hey, our revenue numbers are wrong, or these are the latest stats that need to be updated, or this is incorrect, factually incorrect information. Here's our source that proves this to be true. And then wait, hope for the best. Somebody will notice your commentary on the talk page and make those edits. But in the real world, it doesn't happen. Nobody just happens to go to the talk page, notice those edits, requests for edits, and so I'll help out this employee of the company of this particular Wikipedia article. So, what's the correct and pragmatic and outcome focused path for someone to go on if they're facing this issue? They need to make some edits. They can't make them themselves or they'll get in trouble. Nobody will notice what they post to the talk page for the article. What do you do?
Yeah, I think that's one of the big challenges with Wikipedia, because a lot of the rules essentially in practice are broken. Essentially, it's if you announce you have a conflict of interest, then you're tagged with a scarlet letter and everyone acts like they've spotted a witch. If you don't declare one, there's a rule about that. And then there are a variety of essentially bad actors who are sort of using Wikipedia rules for their own purposes, be them competitors or people who don't like big corporations or whatever else might be there. I've often thought that the Wikimedia Foundation could sponsor someone just to go through talk pages just to keep the process a little more functional. Same thing, there's a 2-3 month delay from when new pages are submitted at this point, which again, I think worked a lot better when it was an encyclopedia of, that wasn't changing and didn't have current companies in it. what we like to, refer back to is the idea of, are you improving the encyclopedia or not as a North Star, and then figure out how you navigate around that based on really the unique situation for any page that you're on. The challenge with the idea of the conflict of interest, and I think you did an admirable job summarizing what is a very long and very debated and very Talmudic discussion, is that things sort of break down when you're relying on the goodness of the internet to do things, especially when there are people who sort of citing the old Mark Twain quote about the ability to convince a person is in direct conflict with or proportion to how much they're being paid to believe the opposite thing, happens a lot with Wikipedia. And unfortunately, oftentimes it's the people who have a negative take on something tend to be the ones with more credibility in Wikipedia arguments. So really, a lot of times what our focus is and our advice to our clients is here's what you can do to get back to neutral, right? Which is sort of the goal of Wikipedia, is to have neutral fact-based information. And then present a variety of options for doing it. Sometimes we know editors who are interested in a particular field and who like cleaning stuff up. There are a bunch of different options, but the challenge is there are so many rules within Wikipedia that have been used in so many different ways, it can seem almost impenetrable to get to accurate information. Which is really what Wikipedia is supposed to be all about.
Yeah. One strategy that I don't know if you recommend this to your clients, but you can post to the conflict of interest notice board, COI notice board, mm-hmm. and explain that you posted to the talk page and it was a period of time, nobody did anything. These are factual inaccuracies. And can somebody please come in and help out with this, because I want to be compliant with COI guidelines, and that can get you some positive movement with your
yeah. We've seen that work. There's also the Tea House, which is a chat board for Wikipedia, and you also have the ability to reach out to individual editors who may have been involved in a particular page to say, hey, you seem to edit the Microsoft page frequently and be concerned about accuracy. I've posted on the talk page. Could you take a look at that? And, oftentimes that will work. Sometimes it won't. Usually the more interesting cases are in the sometimes it won't category. If it works the way it's supposed to and someone updates the page, that's terrific. That's Wikipedia working the way it should. But it doesn't always, which is really not a surprise. And frankly, it's wonderful that Wikipedia works as well as it has in terms of sort of synthesizing the world's knowledge. But if you're running an agency, it's certainly can be a little bit maddening, just as it is for clients, in that there's never really an end. If your recommendation earlier designs a website, at some point you say, yes, we've finished the website, we're publishing it, and you have some sort of demarcation. You generally don't have the risk that a month later, some random person on the internet will redesign your entire website for you, which is, unfortunately the challenge with Wikipedia, in addition to the fact that it's crowdsourced. So getting a page to be the way you would design it as if you were designing a press release just doesn't work that way, and is often a challenge for people to understand.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Now, you mentioned or alluded to earlier that there are tools for Wikipedia. What are your favorites?
There are 2 or 3 different companies out there that have just normal notification tools, so you can get a notification Anytime a Wikipedia page you're interested in is updated. There's also a Chrome plugin for your browser, but 5blocks is a reputation agency that has a really nice tool like that. Butler Inc. has a paid tool, or at least they did. I don't know if they still offer it, which as part of the paid service would spit out advice on what you could do in particular Wikipedia situations. So those are a couple. And then just the nice thing about Wikipedia is the community has developed a lot of on Wikipedia tools. The big example was the visual editor, which made it possible for a lot of underrepresented populations to participate. Because if you weren't, recreationally editing HTML code, you probably weren't going to edit Wikipedia code before they did that. And there are a bunch of auto citation tools. And they also came out when people started trying to abuse Wikipedia for SEO purposes. The dead link finder tools that are built into Wikipedia are really good for finding out when a source has sort of gone dead and needs to be updated. So that's particularly helpful if you're trying to catch a page up to date, or just look at a new page and get a feel for whether or not the information is current. There aren't
And
a
by
ton
the
of.
way, when you find that there's an article or a reference where the website or the page is no longer online, you can change the link to point to the version of that article or reference resource that was in the Wayback Machine, or that is in the Wayback Machine, and use that instead. So that's a really good way to still use the same source, even if the website or at least the page is completely gone. And in fact, speaking of the Wayback Machine, archive.org, there's a cool tool that can resurrect the entire website. It's called Warrick, Warrick, and you can point it to any domain and have it recover a version from the past of that entire website, all the images, all the different pages, and store that on your computer or on another server that you could resurrect your old website if it got hacked and you didn't have a backup.
That's awesome. That's a great tip.
Yeah. Now, one thing you mentioned about Wikipedia that I think it has more general applicability for our listener is a tool for detecting changes to a Wikipedia article, like that 5blocks tool. There are tools that will detect any website changes. It doesn't have to be a Wikipedia article, it could be anything. And you can specify not just which page to monitor, but even what elements on the page, what part of the page to monitor and notify you about. There's a list of some of the best ones out there on honkayet.com, and I'll include the link in the show notes. The article is called 5 Best Free Tools to Monitor Website Changes. So let's say that you're trying to find out when an event is going to become available to register and they haven't specified the date. You can point one of these tools towards the website to that particular page that announces the event, and as soon as it changes, you get notifications.
Yeah, those are fantastically helpful. We've used them for, doctor's appointments. There are people who will use them, and even more advanced tools for, your sneaker releases and things like that as well. So, that's a great tip, because there are often a lot of reasons that you would want to know when something time sensitive is happening.
Yep. Now back to Wikipedia. You have an entire book on this, and you made a really generous offer you shared with me before we started recording. If you want to share what you'll do for our listener, that's pretty amazing.
Sure. Yeah. Anyone who wants to just drop me a note on the contact us form, of the company page, which I'm sure we can link to, the mathergroupllc.com. Just put free book in there and your address, and I would be happy to send one your way. If you are somewhere internationally, I suspect it would take a bit longer, but we'll give it a try, or at the very least, we can get you a PDF. Yeah, I'd be happy to send one out. I think the more that we can get information out there about how it works, the more valuable a tool it'll be for everyone.
Yeah. So for at least those in the U.S., you're offering to send a physical copy completely free to our listener.
I am, yes.
That is so generous. Thank you.
Of course, yes. Happy to be able to do it.
Yeah, thank you. So for our last topic for this interview, I know we're running short on time, I'd love to chat a little bit about masterminds and the society, of course, being one that we were both in, that has been impactful for me, and I believe quite impactful for you too. I'd love to hear more about some of the outcomes or some of the benefits of being in the society, Neil Strauss's mastermind, and if you have any other favorites as well.
Yeah, I think one of the big benefits of not just that mastermind, but most masterminds, is you get to meet people with similar interests in sort of a curated way, as opposed to oftentimes the random chance of life, and sort of know that you're going to both form those relationships, and those will build over time, in addition to the content of whatever a mastermind is. But I think that in my case, one of the things that that did was just, there was a lot of life transition, not least of which was starting a business, and there were both resources as part of that mastermind, as well as people who'd been there and done that, which was I think very helpful for confidence in terms of starting things. I'm also a big fan of Genius Network, as you know. And then there's one, it's sort of interesting how the pandemic has changed the nature of masterminds. You're starting to see people get back together in person. But there's one locally in DC called Cadre. A lot of sort of business owners or entrepreneurs, and it was DC based, and they opened it up much wider, given all the meetings were virtual, and that's brought in some really interesting people sort of from across the world, but also allowed them to bring in some really interesting speakers. John Jantz from Duct Tape Marketing was in. They had some people from the John Hopkins research into psychedelics talk. So it's probably the group I'm most active in currently, and it'll be interesting to see what 2022 brings with seemingly renewed travel for people. And I'd be curious. I've sort of wondered which group has been the most beneficial or impactful for you as well, because I know you've been in a number.
Yeah, I'm in 5 or 6 right now. Yeah, it's a lot, but I don't feel like I have to attend every meeting. I don't have to attend every minute of each meeting as well. I learned this concept of bibliomancy, or I knew the concept of it. I didn't know the name of it until I interviewed Yannick Silver recently for my other podcast. Actually, I published the episode also here on Marketing Speak of Yannick's, because he's such a phenomenal marketer. But the episode was really about spirituality more than anything. And the term is called bibliomancy that he shared in the interview. And the idea of it is you open up a book with intention and with a willing suspension of disbelief, and you get guided to the exact thing that you need at that moment. right? So you ever have that happen where you opened up a book kind of randomly, but that was the message that you needed to hear or read or see at that very moment? It's just like uncanny how that worked out.
Yeah, I had no idea there was a term for that. Now I'm going to go listen to that episode of the podcast because, I'm a big fan of reading, and I can definitely see where it would apply to masterminds as well, where just you need that one nugget, and if the
Yeah,
universe is going to guide you there, that's awesome.
yeah, exactly. And the way that Dan Sullivan, founder of Strategic Coach, which is another mastermind I'm in, uh, frames it is he's basically a grizzly bear hanging out at the river during the salmon run, and he doesn't need all of the salmon. He just needs one, two, or three. So he is at a Genius Network event, for example, and he's scooping up, several salmon to move him forward in his life or business, and he's satiated. He's gotten what he needed. He doesn't feel like he has to absorb absolutely everything out of the event. So that takes a lot of the pressure off. And if you apply the concept of bibliomancy to your masterminds and events, seminars, conferences that you attend, then you don't have to be in the room every minute getting all of the content, and you don't have to have FOMO because there are 6 simultaneous breakout tracks and you can't be in all
Yeah.
places at once, and then you put all this weight on your shoulders and guilt for like, I gotta watch all the recordings and I haven't gotten to it yet. Well, you're never going to get to it, and that's okay. It's not meant to be, but what you needed to get out of it, you did. So just relax and let the universe do its magic. And I think that's a metaphor for life. So that I found to be really valuable. So I can be in 6 masterminds at the same time: Genius Network, Strategic Coach, Abundance 360, um, Silver Circle, James Schramko's mastermind, Metal, and JVMM, Joint Venture Mastermind. Wow, that's 7. It's like, that's a lot. I just recently dropped out of Abundance 360, but now I just joined Maverick because I had such a powerful conversation with Yannick Silver. I decided to join his mastermind, and so I'm going to the event in December. So that's exciting and fun, and yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, but I've had such powerful experiences, epiphanies, breakthroughs from being in the different masterminds, being in Tony Robbins' Platinum Partnership. That's how I met my wife. Um, at a Date with Destiny event of Tony's that a mutual friend, a Platinum partner, introduced us at the end of the event. I had a spiritual awakening on one of the Platinum Partner trips in India in 2012, where one of the oneness monks touched me on the head and zapped me. It was like a LSD trip. I've had incredible, um, life-saving interventions happen because of different seminars and masterminds. Metal, which is a fantastic mastermind. I highly recommend it. You should be a member, by the way.
Right.
It's a men's only group that went from just local LA to global because of the pandemic, and they're going to stay virtual and global. It's an amazing group. I've been in it since, I don't know, 2014 or something like that. And one of the things that came out of that was I met Mark Nelson, the medium, who he's also an ad guy, copywriter, and I started talking about that in one of the Zoom breakouts. But then he's mentioned on the side that he's also a psychic medium, and I'm like, what? Tell me more about that. And I had him on my other podcast on Get Yourself Optimized, and while I was interviewing him, he saved my family member's life. during
Wow.
the interview. So, there are no coincidences. There's nothing random in this universe. And the fact that he was the only interview I put into a 3-week time period when I was very busy trying to move to Florida at the time. And that was the moment that the family member was having a stroke. Like there's no coincidence. There's no coincidence there. It's absolutely preordained, divinely orchestrated, like everything else in this reality. So that's been amazing, being in metal, in the yeah, life-changing, life-saving
Right.
resources and people. Then there's Genius Network. So I had a big spiritual awakening at the beginning of this year in 2021, where it came about because I interviewed someone who is in Genius Network, actually his wife, who's a famous medium. And again, we met in a Zoom breakout. Again, no coincidences. So this is Marcus Gillette, who I met, and then his wife, Sheila Gillette, is who I interviewed. She channels 12 archangels. And yes, she is the real deal. It's really 12 archangels. And yeah, I was really inspired by that episode and by my research about her before I did the interview. And a few months later, I prayed for something that she had prayed for herself when she had her near-death experience, and God answered immediately, and thinned the veils, and like everything's different now as of January 22nd. So none of that would have happened if I wasn't
Yeah.
in Genius Network. So yeah, these sorts of things happen when synchronicities and serendipities happen when you put yourself on a path of growth and of service rather than self-service, and you're willing to invest. Because Genius Network isn't cheap. It's $25,000 to be in it per year. The other masterminds are less expensive. JVMM and Metal are like, I think maybe $1,200 or something a year. So that's quite a bit less. Each one has its strengths, and you just kind of tap into your intuition and trust that you're going to end up making the right choices about what you end up joining and what you end up culling, because you can't do everything. FOMO is not it's not a useful trait to have.
Well, and I think that idea of bibliomancy is incredibly powerful. I've got 4 different folders of things I should read sitting here, and lots of queued up material to watch. So definitely going to take that one to heart.
Yeah, it's important to kind of tune in first and be in a receptive and kind of coachable mode, coachable from your guides and your spiritual support team, and not just from people on this side of the veil. And yeah, amazing things can happen. Also, I wanted to ask you one thing about your time in the society. How long was that, and was that instrumental in you meeting your wife?
I would say about 3 years, and instrumental.
Or did it at least play a
That's
part? Because there's
I would
stuff in
say
there
play a
about
part, or
confidence.
maybe I was going to go with being in a position where us connecting was a lot more likely to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Would be my thought. I would need to think about that a little bit more, but it definitely was the right thing at the right time. Going back to what you were saying, like yeah, definitely lined up with what
Yeah.
I think I needed at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, for me too. I mean, it was very much an important support. One in me having the uh, building in me the confidence to approach, to be confident in conversation with the opposite sex. I had not very good social skills. I'd been married for 18 years, and I went 2.5 years without a single date until
Mm.
I started learning from Neil and read his book first, The Game. Then, yeah. By the way, guess who recommended I read The Game that ended up leading to me joining the society? So, a mutual friend,
Um,
somebody that you wouldn't guess.
oh, now I'm really curious. I give up. Who? Alan Dick.
Ah, there we go. Thank you. Yeah, yeah. Alan Dick from formerly of
Wow.
Vintage Tub and Bath. He told me back in, I don't know, the late 2000s, like 2008 or 9 or something, to read that book. And it wasn't even in the context of you need to know this for dating or whatever. I hadn't even gotten divorced yet at that point that he recommended the book. He said, it's just really good for business. You'll understand how to show confidence and swagger and be better at deal making and negotiate. It'll be really good for you, Stephan. And I started reading it, and then my wife at the time told me that she was going to file for divorce, and I was devastated. I was surprised and everything. Of course, best thing that ever happened in retrospect. But that was a hard pill to swallow at that time. And so then I started really digging into that book in earnest for the purpose of being able to be less of an absolute dork, who socially awkward dork who didn't really know how to talk to women. So yeah, all these things were a very important kind of piece in an overall puzzle. Of course, it only makes sense in retrospect, looking
Right.
back, right? It didn't make sense
Yeah.
all at the time. It didn't seem like it was orchestrated, but it all was. Anyway, so yeah, uh, fun experiences going through all of these different masterminds and all these different learning opportunities and epiphanies and
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
Sort of ending up in the right, like you said, synchronicity in terms of ending up in the right spot at the right time.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
Which
Well,
is
this was a
awesome.
great, fun way to end the episode. So if you could share again your website URL, and also if people wanted to follow you on social media and work with you, learn from
Yeah.
you, all that, where do they go?
So we're the Mather Group LLC.com. The link to all the socials is there. And just fill out the contact form with a free book, and we'll send you a hard copy to wherever you may be.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh. This was great, and I really appreciate you, and I value our friendship.
Same here. Thanks for having me on. It's fantastic to be able to catch up.
Yeah. All right. And listener, I hope you take something from this episode and apply it in your life, in your business, in your career. Make a difference in the world, and we'll catch you in the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.